Hello and welcome inside the final edition of IndyStar Preps Weekly for the season. Today we are branding this the Akeem Glaspie Memorial Show, as Akeem's chances died in the picks competition this week. It's a sad day for Akeem. We'll touch on that later, but before we get to that, let's talk about semi-state last week. Akeem, you had one of the more, I don't know if it's surprising, but certainly one of the more eye-catching results of the week with East Central knocking off Roncalli in a really dramatic finish. I think among the three of us, you probably had the most exhilarating game of all of us.
Yeah, it was an overtime game. East Central won 24-21 with a game-winning field goal in overtime. It was pretty much came down to the fourth quarter there. Roncalli, they get a stop and they're driving down the field. I believe it was like 37 seconds left. The drive stalls out, and then they have to kick a field goal, like a relatively makeable field goal from the 13, so that would have from the 14, so that would have been a 31-yard field goal that is blocked, forcing overtime. And then Roncalli gets the ball to start overtime, but at that point you could kind of sense that momentum was shifting. You know, East Central's at home, they have the crowd on their side. Roncalli had a chance to win the game. You know, they're probably getting ready to celebrate. They're probably getting ready to erupt, and then it's blocked, and then they kind of get deflated. The crazy part is overtime starts on the 10-yard line, and you would think with that offense, 10 yards away with that offensive line that, okay, 3 running plays and we're in. And nope, the drive kind of stalls out. I believe they had a penalty on first down. They get around the 8-yard line and fumble the ball on fourth down. So the final play of Roncalli's offense was like a missed snap handoff that's equally deflating. And then again, East Central gets the ball right back on the opposing 10, and they're able to convert their field goal. So that was kind of just probably a very unpleasant way for Roncalli's season to end, because it just came down to a couple plays here and there. But I mean, we knew this game, or they knew that this game was going to be close. There were no secrets in this game. Two very similar teams, and the team that could control the line of scrimmage won. You know, East Central did a really good job. We were talking earlier. I mean, Josh Ringer, he's a hammer. He's going to get 4 or 5 yards every play, and it's you basically just waiting for them to mess up on their own, because it's really hard to stop. And then at the end, East Central's offense was just very consistent. They had a couple pass plays, a couple trick plays. Eli Aston, the wide receiver there, he threw like a reverse pass that helped them get down to the red zone in one play. And he was the kid that actually had the field goal block coming off the edge. And talking to him, he's like, yeah, they said go block it, so I blocked it. And he hadn't been playing defense that often, but he just really timed up his jump. I saw some people say that he might have been offsides. That's not for me to debate, but he timed up the jump well and got the block. So yeah, they're going to the state finals now, and Roncalli is kind of, I would definitely say it's an end of an era for that squad with all the talent that they have, you know. But like, it wasn't just the Luke Haenchen show, though. I will say, I mean, Eric Moyers made some really good downfield throws, you know. So that was a more balanced Roncalli squad than I had been used to seeing too. So the outcome was definitely shocking. But no, East Central, they're for real.
Kyle, what did you make of that? And I guess for both of you guys, just the depth that seems like in 4A. We were talking about that before we came on the air. I feel like this result kind of speaks to the depth and level of talent in that class that we've been seeing all year.
Yeah, and I talked to Jake Miners, the East Central coach, at the media day yesterday, and he mentioned that as well. It's like, man, we're kind of waiting there. Last year they had to go. Mooresville was in their sectional, so they had to come all the way over from the Cincinnati area to play Mooresville, and battle through that team. And then this year, we had all these great 4A teams kind of bundled up there in the South, counting Roncalli and New Pal. And I'll give us credit, because on this show we talked about, Roncalli and New Pal being, a great game and maybe for the state championship. But then we said, hey, one of these teams is going to have to beat East Central. So I know a lot of people on Twitter are like, oh, so much for the de facto state champion. Is like, we didn't say that. We knew East Central was the real deal. So I'll give us credit for that. But I mean, 4A this year, it would have been, and really East Central's got a team that next year will be really good too, because they bring back their quarterback, their receiver, their running back, who are all really good. And he kind of said, Jake Miner said that yesterday, is like, we needed to play with some urgency now, because you never know for sure what can happen, but they are set up for this year and next year, more so than like Roncalli would be. So that's kind of, that's the sad thing, having covered that Roncalli team, that this senior class is so good and talented. It somewhat seemed like destiny, considering the Luke Swartz story and with his dad passing away and all those things. But like Akeem said, one field goal block doesn't happen, and Roncalli's sitting here and playing this game. So it's just sort of it doesn't always come down to one play, but man, that's one play that obviously was very huge in a game, and it shows how close these teams are too. Just to and both games have showed that this season between them. But yeah, 4A just a gauntlet, and I think East Central pretty clearly, and we'll talk about it in a bit, but I think they're definitely the favorite to win the state championship. Whoever came out of that South, I think, was going to be the team to beat this weekend.
Akeem, final thoughts, sir, from you on 4A before we dive into the championship game here in a bit?
No, I think Kyle summed it up well. I mean, yeah, but like you said, between New Pal, Roncalli, and East Central, we had a feeling that obviously one of them was going to be the team to beat, and they kind of proved that throughout the year. So, no, I just think it was a really stacked class, and it's, it sucks that they all couldn't be champions in a way.
Absolutely. Touching quickly on the Class A game, which I have between Lutheran and North Decatur. North Decatur looked legit. They outplayed Lutheran through large chunks of that game. Lutheran's coach straight up said it afterwards too. They forced, I think it was 3 turnovers on the night, but weren't able to cash in. Their defense, they had Lutheran struggling to get off the field a lot of times, but just weren't quite able to finish off enough drives. And from Luther's perspective, they've won so many games in a row now. I think it's 39. They're used to this type of adversity of just having to grind out games and finding different ways to win. And they're expecting this type of game, whether it was last Friday or in the championship game. They knew that there was going to be a team that forced them to slow down and was able to bottle up that explosive offense. So they'd have to find another way to win, find another way to get that one extra point necessary to win. And that's exactly what they did. And it was an impressive display of resiliency from a team that maybe, when you're dealing with high school kids, you're not sure how they'd respond to that type of situation, having not faced it very often before. But they handled it with aplomb, and now they're moving on to the championship game for the second straight season, with a chance to repeat and run that win streak to 40 straight games. Speaking of streaks, Kyle, Center Grove streak lives on with an impressive win over Cathedral that I think when I saw it was 10-0 Cathedral, right? And then Center Grove came back with 30-something unanswered.
Yeah, really weird how that game switched. I'm not sure what I asked some of the kids and the coaches after the game, like what, was there something tactical that changed? Because all of a sudden, Cathedral got a field goal and a touchdown their first 2 drives. And then after that, it was just lights out. They rushed the passer like nobody I've seen before against Cathedral. 7 sacks in that game, and just they were all, just all over them. And Cathedral did have success running the ball, though, and I kind of wonder if maybe they should have stuck with that a little bit more in retrospect with Carson Johnson having the game that he did on the ground. And it was that type of weather night where, I was looking around the stats. There was not a lot of big passing nights for anybody in that snow. And I don't know where you guys had it like that too, but we at Tech, it was really just blowing sideways, and at times it was really coming down pretty hard. It wasn't like super windy, but it was definitely coming down pretty much the whole night. And it was very cold, obviously, too. So it just wasn't conducive for passing. I think Center Grove only completed 3 passes, and they didn't really need to. Micah Coyle, again, had a huge game, 218 yards and 4 touchdowns. He bounced one to the outside. He ran one up the middle and then bounced it to the outside for 16 yards, probably one of the highlights of the season that I've seen for a run. And, it just felt like that. Center Grove, sort of, I don't know what the word is, but their aura about it just kind of started taking over, and you could just feel it. I've covered it many times. You see it happen with that team, that program, where it just feels like there's no stopping this ball from rolling down the hill. And that's kind of what felt like happened to Cathedral. And they couldn't get it turned around at any point, really. And, it's hard. That running game is just really cranked up right now. And with the defense playing like they did, said they were a little embarrassed last time when O'Neill threw for 410 yards on them, and they had that fourth quarter comeback, and they just kind of did what they wanted. They kind of started out that way Friday, but yeah, Center Grove, there's something about them. It's November. They don't lose very often in November, and now they're back. In a season where I don't know if a lot of people expected them to be here. I certainly had my questions. It looked like Cathedral was the better team coming in, really. I know I picked Center Grove, but I felt like it was kind of an upset pick last week. But here they are again, and Eric Moore, credit him and his staff and those guys, because this is not a team that was just absolutely steamrolling everybody for sure. So, but yeah, they've got it going again, and I think they might be the favorite to win. We'll talk about that in a minute, but favorite to win a 6A title probably again for a third straight year.
Before we jump ahead to the championship games, you should probably talk about the other 6A semi-state, which was Carroll. Fort Wayne Carroll hosting HSE in the snow. Carroll comes out with the win. I'll throw it out to both of you guys. Thoughts on that outcome? And I guess that's a pretty big statement there by the Chargers.
Yeah, for sure. It's an HSE team. We've talked a lot about how they were kind of that workman-like, blue collar, run the ball, play great defense. And, unfortunately, Evan Sherrill, one of their leaders on defense, suffered a broken leg in that game. And I think that was early in the game. I think it was the second quarter when that happened. I'm not saying that's why Carroll won, but obviously that's a big loss for that HSE defense, and you hate to see that happen to a kid who's been so good all season for them. But yeah, this Carroll team, they're playing with a lot of emotion. Talking to their coach yesterday, the young man who would have been their starting quarterback, Owen Scheel, passed away in the summer, and that's been sort of a galvanizing thing for that team this year. And Doug Dinan, their coach, was saying he actually kind of teared up a little bit talking about that yesterday. So obviously they're playing for the first time they've done this before. It's a Fort Wayne team. I think it'd been about 20 years since a Fort Wayne team has made it in the biggest class, which is now 6A, used to be 5A. So cool for them. I think it's cool to see a different team get in, which would have been the case for HSE too. They haven't been there in a long time either, but I think it's good, to see some new blood in there and a chance for them to, like, all right, let's see what we got against Center Grove. And this actually, these teams are going to start playing each other, I think, in 2 years in the regular season. So the SAC conference up in Fort Wayne, they're splitting their divisions, so that'll allow them to play some non-conference games, which I think is great for Carroll. That they, you want to come down here and play some of those teams to kind of help your program, and Doug said that yesterday. Is, hey, now they're going to start playing. And I have to go. I think they're playing Warren Central next year. I have to look at that for sure. But they're going to start playing some of the our local teams here, and I think that's going to be a good thing for their program moving forward. But obviously getting here, this is even better for their program. So it'll be fun to see what that game looks like. I kind of think it's going to be a really good game. Looking at the two teams, I think there's a lot of similarities there.
Absolutely. Akeem, did anything else jump out to you from semi-state weekend?
No, I mean, again, I think Kyle summed it up pretty well. I guess just in HSE's case, it seemed like they had the formula with, a strong running game and a defense and then a big play receiver. That's usually a good formula for a championship level team. So it's just, that was kind of surprising that they weren't able to pull it off. But no, I think we've hit everything.
Yeah, that's the thing about HSE. That style of play seems well suited for this time of year in particular, when the weather's terrible. It's snowy, it's windy, and looking at some of the pictures and photos and video coming out of Fort Wayne, I mean, it looked like a snow globe out there, wind and all. But yeah, tip of the cap to Carroll for proving, I'm sure, a lot of people wrong and pulling that thing off. Time for Kyle's favorite part of the show, and that's the picks. We'll go ahead and play the intro for that, Clark. Kyle finished last week 8-4. Akeem went a respectable but not great 6-6. That means that Kyle has a 7-game lead with 6 games remaining. And Akeem, the mathematics say you have been eliminated. I'll let you give your concession speech.
Yeah, I just want to, congratulate Kyle. He's, you can't just roll out of bed and defeat Kyle Neddenriep. It took a lot of research and a lot of time on my part. But, at the end of the day, Kyle, he kind of knows what he's talking about. I'd hate to admit it, but he's a very talented and knowledgeable reporter. So, it's definitely no slight against me for coming up short because, Kyle is the best of the best. So it's just we're going to have to go back in the lab, kind of figure out what we did wrong and come back stronger next year. But I tip my cap to Mr. Neddenriep there. And yeah, he earned a good win over me this year. But I will say I showed improvement. That's all I can do is just continue to build year after year. And then slowly but surely I'll surpass Kyle.
Akeem, as you look back on the film now, is there a spot where this all went wrong for you? Like, if we could pinpoint where this took a turn for you, where would you say it was?
Man, I don't know, because then I'd have to call out some teams that let me down. So I'm just gonna say that I got to just research a little more and crunch the numbers a little bit, and then we'll come out on top.
Kyle, before we get on to your victory lap here, would you like to say any words as the victor once again and still reigning champion?
Well, you don't see a concession speech all the time, so I tip my hat to Akeem for being man enough to, even when he loses, give him props for that. But no, it was a good run. Akeem had me on my heels there. I think he had a 3-game lead at one point, or at least a 2-game lose, but he had the lead. So I had to dig in. I had to take him seriously. Last year I didn't have to take him seriously because I got such a huge lead early. So it was like Akeem turned over a new leaf this year and he went after it. So I salute him, and yeah, I was feeling pretty good about my picks this week. And then I didn't even do that good either because I missed IHSAA. I missed 4 games, so it wasn't like I lit it on fire either. But that's been the weird thing about this the last 2 weeks. Really, we've both missed a lot of games, and so that means it's a good tournament, I think, because sometimes this time of year it gets pretty easy to pick them, but not this year.
It does seem like there's some more parity just in reading your reactions on Twitter, Kyle, and the limited knowledge that I do have. It seems like there have been some more surprising outcomes, kind of scattered throughout the year, even.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get to these too, but Whiteland making their first appearance in the state finals. Valparaiso, I don't know if you guys saw that. I retweeted it out, but they had a play on the last play of the game. It's like a do or die. Amazing. Justin Clark somehow gets to the end zone, weaving through traffic and jumping into I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, I wish I was there, to write about that, but it's just a super cool moment. And then they go for 2 and get it. And so that's another one. Like, they beat Fort Wayne Snyder, who was ranked number 1 in 5A. So there's been a lot of those type of even your game, Brian, with Lutheran, that I thought that could be, you don't know for sure, but I thought that could be a running clock game, and it wasn't. But there's just been a lot of those that have been really good games in the tournament. So, and hopefully that leads to good games this weekend. I hope anyway.
Absolutely. Kyle, I'll leave it up to you how we approach these championship games. You want to just start with Friday and go through all 6? You want to focus on our area teams? How do you want to handle this?
Let's just go Friday by time, just 2A, 4A, 6A, and then we can go that way.
Sounds good. Then let's start off with 2A then. It's at 11 a.m. on Friday. Andrian 10-3 against Evansville Mater Dei 11-3. Kyle, as the reigning champion, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is a rematch of last year, and I talked to Drake Bowen. He was at the media day yesterday, and they won that game 21-9 last year. A lot of the same players are back from that game, including Drake Bowen, and he is he's having himself quite a tournament, I would say. I think he was over 300 yards rushing last week against Fort Wayne Lures. He had 15 tackles. He's just been dominant. He's the reigning Gatorade Player of the Year. All season we've kind of talked about him as maybe the front runner for Mr. Football. Also talking about Luke Hansen, who we mentioned earlier from Roncalli. So I know there's some other guys out there too, but it just feels like the momentum is heading that way. And I talked to him about that a little bit yesterday, but it's kind of heading in that direction. If they win state again, I can't imagine, he's not going to be the front runner for it. Stranger things have happened for sure, but yeah, I mean, this Andrean team's really got it rolling right now, and I kind of like them to win this game. Although Mater Dei, I feel like people are, both of these teams really, they're 10-3 against 11-3, but they play a lot of bigger schools in their area. They're from bigger cities, so they're smaller schools in bigger areas, and they play bigger schools. So that leads you to losing some games. But they have a quarterback, Mason Wunderlich, who's been here before. Seems like he's been around forever. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the area. So I'm going to pick Andrean. I think this game might be a little bit more high scoring than it was last year, but I don't think Bowen's going to let a whole lot get by him at that linebacker spot. And if you remember watching this game last year, it felt like he was all over the place. And when you watch him too, he's just bigger than he's bigger and faster than everybody. How those two things happen at the same time, I don't know, but he's just like a wrecking ball out there. So But yeah, it'll be fun. I can't wait to watch him on Saturday or on Friday, and just see him play for one more time.
Akeem, who you picking in this one?
Yeah, no, Kyle summed it up well. I mean, Drake Bowen is definitely the most talented player, the best player on the field, and he plays both ways. So, I mean, that's kind of a big advantage for Andrean. So I'm going Andrean.
4A at 3 p.m. Eastern. We have New Prairie 13-1 against East Central 12-2. Akeem, you just saw East Central play, so we'll lead off with you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about formulas to win, and East Central definitely has it with their running attack. I mean, quarterback Cole Burton, they can pass a little bit, but if it was up to them, they'd probably run every single play of the game. And Josh Ringer, I mean, he's a really big kid. I think he's about 6'2", really solid built, and he's gonna get 4 or 5 yards every time, like I said. And if that game will be over quick if they can keep the chains moving, and that clock's not gonna stop, and only on first down. So that's kind of how East Central wants to play, and their defense is stout as well. I mean, Roncalli, again, they have probably one of the best offensive lines in the state, but when the defense needs to make a stop, they're able to kind of come together and get stops when they need to. And New Prairie, I believe they have a really talented running back, but I don't think they have quite the rushing attack that a Roncalli would. So just based off what East Central was able to do last week and the combination of talent that they have, I'm going East Central.
Kyle?
Yeah, I think that's the right pick. Last week, New Prairie, they were down 9-0 in the fourth quarter against Kokomo in the weather and everything, and they came back and scored 10 points in the fourth quarter. So obviously, a team that's got a lot of heart to be able to do that. They run sort of a power spread offense, and they do like to run the ball as well. They have two players with over 1,000 yards, including their quarterback. So that's kind of how they like to go about things. But I just think with everything East Central's seen this year, they played Roncalli twice, so they played probably the best running team that they're going to see other than themselves. So I think East Central is going to win this game. I hope it stays close. I know last time New Prairie made it in 2014. New Pal put up 77 points on them. It was like it was the New Pal machine. That was kind of the first time we like New Pal. It's like, wow, who are these guys? And they really took off right then under Kyle Ralph. But so hopefully New Prairie can keep it close. But man, the two times they've made it to the state finals, they've played really, really good teams, which I guess that's probably the case when you make it to state championship. But going to be a tough assignment, I think, for them on Friday.
It's the 6A championship game is at 7 o'clock on Friday. The primetime matchup: Carroll Fort Wayne 13-0 against Center Grove 11-2. Kyle, does the Trojans' reign continue?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's probably the smart pick at this point. And I was talking to Eric Moore yesterday, and he was kind of joking. Him and kind of a cool story. Him and Darren Fisher, the Whiteland coach, are good friends, and both from being from Johnson County schools. So that's kind of another storyline to this. But he was joking with Darren Fisher, like, yeah, we got to play Friday, and you get to play Saturday. You're like the varsity, game, get to go on the Saturday night marquee. But so that's a little, and I keep forgetting that's the case, but they flip flop them every year. But yeah, I think it seems like that championship pedigree is starting to take over with this Center Grove team. And a lot of, if you talk to I know it can be a cliche, I guess, but they talk about how close this team has become, and maybe they've needed that more than the last couple of years with the star power that they had, and guys who are going to be playing in the Big Ten and the SEC, and they don't have that type of a team this year, but they've overcome a lot of injuries. Drew Wheat knocked out early in the year, hadn't played. He was one of our super team running backs, and Micah Coyle stepped into that role with no problem. And he keeps getting better and better. Jalen Thomason playing both ways. That offensive line, what they did Friday, just really, really impressive. But you also have this Carroll team that, like I mentioned earlier, playing for something extra. They're obviously a very connected team as well. They have a younger quarterback now, Sullivan, who's a sophomore, but he's put up great numbers this season. And I think this is a team, like in the future, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be playing some better teams around here in 6A. I think they're going to be a program that continues on to be really good in the future too, especially having these younger guys in key spots. So it'll be an interesting test. I just think this reminds me sort of when Westfield made their first 6A appearance a couple of years ago against Center Grove. and they were a little bit overwhelmed by the spotlight of it, and Center Grove wasn't. And I think that could be, especially early in the game, something to watch for, because it is once you get out there, and you guys have seen it. I mean, Lucas Oil Stadium, it's a different animal. They got all the TV, the lights, and it's a big production, and it's cool. I mean, it really is, but it can also be somewhat overwhelming. I've seen teams kind of be overwhelmed by that spotlight at times. So that's not going to be the case for Center Grove. And I think, I just feel like this team's on the right track to win another state championship.
Akeem, what say you?
Yeah, no, again, Kyle hit the nail on the head there with just the program pedigree and the talent level, that even if they don't have the, elite level talents of the Caden Currys and the Taven Jacksons, there's still a lot of really talented players on that side. And yeah, no, they've come together really well with the running game. Micah Coyle's been definitely a surprise and just kind of been really carrying the load for them with the way he's been running the ball. So no, I'm going Center Grove.
All right, on Saturday, 11 a.m., the 1A championship is Adams Central and Lutheran, both teams coming in at 14-0. Akeem, which of the undefeateds emerges victorious?
Yeah, so this is a rematch of last year's Class A game, and this could easily be the best game of the entire weekend. Like I said, when there's two teams that are so familiar, when they play each other, there's no secrets. It's your best play against my best play, and it's not going to surprise anyone. So it's all about execution and who can execute the best, and who's going to outplay their opponent and make that key play when they need to. And when it comes to making key plays and execution, Lutheran's been flawless. I know both these teams are undefeated, but Lutheran's just been playing at such a high level for the entire season that it's going to be hard for anyone to slow down this machine. And I know Adams Central has a good chance to do so, but I mean, this could either be a shootout, like a 45-40 game, or it could be like a 7-6 game, because again, these two teams know each other very well. But like I've been saying all year, Jackson Willis has been one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, just with the offense and just a smooth left-handed pocket passer, can drop dimes all over the field. So I think he might be the player to watch in this game. So with that advantage that Lutheran has, I'm going Lutheran.
Kyle?
Yeah, I think this will be a close game again. It was last year, and I think Adams Central plays like I don't know if they call it a wing tee necessarily. They do. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a wing tee spread, sort of somewhat similar to Center Grove kind of runs this too, but it's a different type of offense. And if they can, they're going to try to grind it out a little bit more than some teams Lutheran plays, and they'll have some success. It's just a matter of can they kind of stick to it, because I think at some point Lutheran's going to hit some big plays. Can they kind of just stick to what works? And that it did actually work last year in this game, and it was maybe the best game of the weekend, or one of them. So I think we'll see something similar. Adams Central's not going to be overwhelmed by who Lutheran is and what they've done this year, because they've played them before and they've been on this stage before. So I'm this is a really good matchup, and I will say, like, talking to Dave Pash yesterday, that Micah McKay is up to 1,400 receiving yards on the year, 16 touchdown catches, and he played really well last year in this game. So I look for him to have a big game, and playing on the turf seems to benefit Lutheran's speed and athleticism that they have. But again, I think I agree with Akeem. I think it's going to be like a 31-30, or something that I think it's going to be kind of a higher scoring, lots of fun type of game. But I think it'd be kind of foolish not to pick Lutheran at this point. So I'll take the Saints.
All right, the 3 p.m. game is the 3A final. Bishop Chatard 10-4 against Lawrenceburg 13-1. Kyle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Lawrenceburg, I think we mentioned last week, in the last 12 games that they played of the season, they only allowed 40 points total. So, and then they went out last week and they beat our Cinderella story that we talked about, Monrovia, 35-7. So they're having no trouble stopping people. They're one of the best defensive teams in the state, and they have a linebacker named Jake Pierce, has 114 tackles and 4 interceptions this year. So he kind of leads that defense. And Lawrenceburg, they made it here, was it 6 years ago, and got beat in the state championship game. But Ryan Kaniga, who's their coach, he was the coach of that team. So he's back again leading this group of Tigers. And the only loss that they have is to East Central in the first game of the year. So that kind of shows you those two teams are rival teams, and then from that same area of the state. So, they're well tested, I would say, schedule wise. But, talking to Rob Doyle also from Chittard, you talk about a team that plays a tough schedule, they have as well. They've had a lot of injuries this year. Chittard has, especially on the defensive side. They're getting some of those guys back, and at running back too, they've had some injury issues. But Drew Van Vliet's been healthy all year, and that has been a huge reason why they're back in the state championship game. And I expect they're going to air it out and try to beat Lawrenceburg through the air in this game for a large majority, at least in the first half, and then kind of see where it goes from there. But Chittard also had 5 interceptions last week against West Lafayette, so very impressive on both sides of the ball. So I think Chittard's the pick here. I hope it's a good game. Sometimes you wonder, Chittard's done this. They're the all-time champion in most state championships. So, and they don't lose. I think they're 15-1 all time when they've made it to this point. So, they get here and they don't lose for hardly ever. So, I think the Trojans will win the 3A title.
Akeem, who are you picking?
Yeah, Kyle pretty much hit the nail on the head. All-time state leader in championship wins, 15 titles. You talk about program pedigree. It doesn't get much better than that with Chittard, and kind of again contrasting styles there. I mean, if Chittard is a pretty far cry from East Central with the way that they spread it out, and obviously East Central's a running team. So I mean, Lawrenceburg's defense can stop the run, but can they stop the pass? And what Drew Fleet's been able to do, and like Kyle was saying, I don't think so. So I'm going Bishop Chittard.
I was really hoping we were going to get a classic Akeem heel turn there and just be like, having said that, go Lawrenceburg.
No, I don't know. No, like I said, this is a juggernaut, and yeah, Bishop Chittard is very familiar with Lucas Oil Stadium, so I can't pick against them.
All right, last game of the year, Class 5A state final at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's Valparaiso 10-3 against Whiteland 12-1. Akeem, what you have honors?
Yeah, and like I mentioned at our last show, I mean, you asked me during the sectional or preview show, who's the best team in 5A, and I said Whiteland, so I'm gonna pat myself on the back that I reluctantly said Whiteland at the time, and they've proved me right throughout the season there. Again, with the offense that they have, with the kind of a true kind of option attack with the Kevin Denham at quarterback and Payne Everton at fullback and John Crowley. So it's not like a smash mouth kind of attack that you would think. They can get outside and make plays. Nyrus Moore-Smith as well can make plays on the perimeter. So they can generate big plays when they need to, because, again, it could be a close game against Valpo. So if you have to play from behind, it's often hard for these type of teams to generate offense. But that's not the case with Whiteland. I mean, Denham can pass when he needs to, and they can, again, generate big plays at any part of the field. So, and Whiteland's defense has been stout throughout the season as well. So I say all that to say I'm still picking Whiteland.
Good stuff. Kyle, who are you picking?
I thought he was going to pick Valpo after all that. Oh, dang. I think this could be the biggest fight. Both these teams are kind of like fighter type team. Like, they like to run the ball. They like to be physical. So this, not that they're going to fight on the field, but just that type of a game where it's just like a kind of a backyard brawl type of thing. And Akeem's right. I mean, they're kind of like the old wishbone where you run the fullback up the middle so many times, then boom, you pop the other team loses containment, and then they're running 60 yards the other direction. So, that's sort of what Whiteland wants to do. But I think Valpo is going to be expecting that. They're kind of the same type of a team. Even, the coaches yesterday said that they're kind of mirror images somewhat of each other, because Valpo traditionally very good running team. Like we saw, I mentioned earlier, their quarterback in that great play against Snyder, crossing the field and jumping over the inline, it's just a great play. But that's kind of emblematic of what they do. He runs a lot, and they want to run the ball up the middle quite a bit too. So, it'll be I think it's fitting this is the last game of the season, because I think it's going to be a really good one. And I think it could be a fast-moving game based on how much both teams run the ball. I'm hoping for that. So I think that would be a fun way to end it too, with like an hour-long game. So, but that's my own personal feeling. But I'm going to take Whiteland, and I think this would be the first championship in the program history, in the school history for Whiteland. So that would be pretty cool. And Darren Fisher yesterday, very emotional. He cried, I think, 3 times while we were talking about his coaching career and his team. So very cool for him. I think he's one of the guys that coaches pull for. And he said he's just received so many calls and text messages, and from all walks of his career. So that's pretty cool. So and I think that's probably maybe an emotional way to end the season would be if they could win it. Obviously, Valpo hopes that's not true, but I think that'd be pretty cool if Whiteland pulls it off, and I think they will.
All righty, the picks are in. I think you guys agreed on every single game this week, so nice quiet end to the picks contest as well. But yeah, before we get out of here for the last time, what do you guys have coming up this week, Kyle?
So Darren Fisher is actually somebody I'm writing about this week and his kind of journey to get to this point. And it's we're in a condensed week, which is always fun with all the basketball preview stuff coming out and football state finals. So I'm working on, a lot of stuff still. Got most of our basketball preview stuff is out now. With the season starting this week. Super team is out. The Fab 15's out. The all the other stuff that we got is out, except I think 1 or 2 things. So most of that stuff's out. It looks like it's I think people reading it or whatever. So that's a good thing. And then we'll have previews on the football state finals and, like I said, a feature on Darren Fisher and that Whiteland program, and then obviously coverage throughout the weekend. So it'll be fast and furious, and always look forward to. One of the favorite things I do is cover the state finals, and I love the Fridays all season, but it's always fun to be at Lucas Oil for that Friday, Saturday, and see a lot of people that see every year at Lucas Oil.
Akeem, what you got cooking?
Yeah, so I have a Butler story out now that kind of just takes an analytical look at just how they've been playing, and they've been definitely better than projected, throughout the season, and just with the way they've been playing. So they're heading to the Bahamas for the battle for Atlantis, and their first game is against a Tennessee team that's really good. They've got a lot of talent, so that'll be a big barometer for them, for Butler, just to see where they are, just how much progress they actually have made, depending on how they fare against Tennessee. And then, just 3 Butler games this week, Monday, Thursday, and Friday. So, I mean, if they win, they'll keep playing, in primetime games against good teams. If they lose, then they'll be playing, lesser teams. But it's still a really talented field in the tournament. And then Saturday, I have Bishop Chatard. So I'll have the 3A games. So, just a jam-packed week for me.
That battle for Atlantis, I feel like even if you lose the first game, that field is so good. It's like you're guaranteed, 2, 3, 4 good games, right?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what happens, Butler will play the winner of BYU and USC. So, I mean, their second game will still be against a really quality opponent. And, they rack up some wins. That's some good resume builders. So for a team that, maybe they can go dancing, I know it's still early to see, but, they have the looks of a possible tournament team, and they've been doing it all without some key players. So.
Good stuff. Good stuff. From the girls basketball front, as you're watching this, the Fab 15 is out, a new one with reorganization. After a few weeks of games on our belt, we'll have Fishers and Zionsville highlights and some coverage from that game between 2 of the top teams in the state. So that should be really fun. And then this Saturday is the Sneakers for Santa with a whole bunch of good games. The ones that I think everybody will be talking about will be those primetime games with South Bend, Washington, and Noblesville, and then Zionsville, Bedford, North Lawrence. With those are 4 really good games. So if you want to watch some really good basketball, some incredibly talented players, those are the 4 that you want to be at. I also have coverage from that and some stuff throughout the day on there, and then have a wrap of that on Sunday, and then we're going to have some features starting to come out here over the next couple weeks. So that's exciting. But yeah, for Kyle and Akeem, we thank you all so much for watching this season. I know Kyle and I will be back with something for basketball. We're still figuring out how that's going to look. We're thinking more of a podcast thing, but we'll provide updates and teases as that comes. I'm sure Akeem will be doing some video and audio stuff with Butler as well. But yeah, in the meantime, we thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you as a threesome next year.